Happy Katabasis release day. Today is the 26th of August and I am quite literally about to run to my local bookshop and buy the book. Hopefully they have it in stock. That is my main worry right now. Then I'd be really sad. I am super excited for this book. From what I've seen online, it's basically about two academic rivals going into hell to get their professor or academic advisor, whoever, and it's all about that dynamic and the descent into hell, hence the name Katabasis. This sounds very like my kind of book. I didn't even know this was coming. I think R.F Kuang announced it at a speaking event, and so I actually didn't know about it until people started talking about it online. The more I hear about it, the more I'm getting excited. So I'm going to take you with me as I read it, and I'm going to keep you updated. So welcome to the video. I hope you're doing well. Let's go. Time for your Katabasis update. I'm now on page 88. I've been able to give this a good stab. I've been keeping notes. Very serious notes, as you can kind of see. I don't know how much the camera can actually pick up on my writing. I just want to talk and tell you how I'm getting on and how this is going. This is a reading vlog after all. Side note, I have my Hamlet to be or not to be soliloquy mug. I feel like this is fitting the classics theme that we have going on here. Each time I'm going to update you in this video about Katabasis and how it's going on and my feelings, thoughts, whatever. I am just going to be open and honest about plot points, characters, speculation. So each time I will give you a page update so that if you have not gotten to that page yet, you know to maybe skip the section. This moment in time, I'm thinking I will do a spoiler-free review at the end of this video. But for now, as I'm reading it, I really want to discuss it and not be afraid that I'm ruining a book. And I know the book is brand new, but that's why I am going to stick it on screen what page I'm at. So anything, if I guess something correctly that's coming past page 88, that was me speculating. That's not my fault. Because it's not a spoiler if I don't know. Obviously, if I say something that was on page 60, well, I've warned you. I could say something that was on page 60. So I think this is our nice middle ground to not let you guys get spoiled. And I will also put the chapters in the video so you can scroll on the scroll bar and skip wherever. If you don't care about spoilers or if you're not going to read the book, hi, how are you? We're going to chat about the book now in a second. Or if you've read the book, because I don't even know when this will be out. I'd say this will be out hopefully mid-September. So by then I'd say some people will have read it. Hi, if you're one of them. Welcome, enjoy. Let me know what you thought and see if we agree on anything. Anyway, let's get into this. First point of conversation I have is the title. Yes, we're starting with the title. So, Katabasis. There has been so much discourse online about how to pronounce it. Much like the Babel discussion, and the answer in the Babel case, both are correct. And just pronounce it how you want. With this, I've chosen to go with Katabasis. That is the pronunciation that makes sense to me. However, my fiance says Katabasis. I've seen people, I think Katabasis, like change the second syllable sound. Anyway, I watched this interview with R.F Kuang about the pronunciation, and she did say that she says Katabasis, but she also used to say it another way. People online, I think, have gotten a bit mean about it and made it about like an intellectual problem, which I think is really stupid because it's an ancient Greek word. What was really nice from the bookshop came with this. They were doing promotional, put it in front of my face, promotional stuff to do with the book release. And it says here, noun, ancient Greek, the story of a hero's descent to the underworld. Love that. Absolutely love that. I think that's a great name for this book, obviously. Well done, R.F Kuang. It's an ancient Greek word in root or whatever. There's going to be arguments over pronunciation, whatever. And what I thought was quite nice and interesting about R.F Kuang's conversation on this matter is that she said that she herself learned English mostly visually, and a lot of the time she, as a child, teenager, and even now, would pronounce words differently or just incorrectly because she didn't have adults pronouncing the words how they were supposed to around her. She learned just a lot of these words, a load of words, just by reading and seeing them. And so basically she made the point that get off your high horse, don't be like making fun of people for not knowing how to pronounce this word. It's a hard word and most people have not heard it before. A direct quote is don't be an asshole, which I quite liked. A great start, especially for people for who English is not their first language. This makes so much sense. Now you're sitting here and you're like, okay, cool. The title is hard to pronounce, but like, what's the book about? The book is about two PhD students, grad students, Alice Law and Peter Murdoch, and they are in Cambridge studying magic, essentially. I think it's analytic magic, something like that. Their academic advisor died before the start of the book. Together, Alice and Peter are going to travel into hell to get him back so that they can get recommendation letters for their further study and further recommendation stuff, whatever. This professor is famously hard ass and really hard to impress. A recommendation letter from him is like gold. But he died. Real inconvenient for our characters. So they're going to hell to bring him back. This concept, the second I heard it, I knew this book was for me. The millisecond. Because first off, my first thought was Orpheus, you know, going into the underworld after Eurydice. And then it was Dante's Inferno, which I've not read or anything, but you know, pop culture or just being a human in the world, I know enough about just by, I don't know, existing. And also just like the title is a ancient Greek word. So I knew there was going to be loads of tie-ins to Greek mythology. And we all know, if you've been here, if you're a long-time viewer, hopefully there's at least one of you, you know that I am such a nerd for Greek mythology and it makes me so happy. I knew this is my book and the pages are flying by. I am, just spoiler alert, loving this book. I'm gonna start breaking down my notes. First, Alice. It is actually her fault that the professor died. That's kind of part of her motivation. Like her outward motivation is the recommendation stuff, but it was actually her fault. So a lot of the magic in this is to do with using chalk to draw pentagrams and sealing magic. They have to be done specific ways. There's specific things that are important, and if they're not done, bad consequences. And there's also like a bit of a mathematical tie to how you draw the pentagrams, like they need to be this angle or that distance. It's really cool melding of real like maths and magic. So I like that little crossover going on here. So this professor he's not a good guy. He belongs in hell anyway. So he gets his grad students, he kind of uses them as little puppets. For example, if he has a seminar or whatever, he'll get the grad students to set it up. A demonstration, a lab, he'll have them do all the demeaning below him tasks, and then he'll just show up, do the thing, and go back to his research. He really is the vibe that we've gotten so far, is it's all about the research. He doesn't care about the teaching aspect or the people aspect. All he wants is to do his research. And the worst part is he's damn good at it. He gets away with a lot. Also, I believe this book is set in the past. I want to say the 1960s. Don't quote me on that. This is my speculation at this point, but I think it's around the 60s. With Alice, she was the grad student setting up for this lab or something. It was a demonstration, I think. She did the pentagram, but she was so exhausted from just being a PhD student that she did it wrong, and she didn't double check her work. He stepped into it, he was doing a bit of magic, and then he literally exploded. Think like body parts going everywhere, guts, intestines, all of it. It was an interesting scene. Alice basically just ran away, cleaned herself off, burned her clothes, and pretended she never saw anything, and then his parts were found and people assumed it was just an accident. Especially parts of the pentagram were like smudged with gore. People couldn't really tell that it was such a small thing that went wrong. From that point, she began researching hell and how to get there, what to do. And the thing is, obviously there's conflicting reports. There's differing accounts. We have Orpheus actually mentioned, Dante also mentioned. I never know how to pronounce this word. It's a Greek word, Aeneas. I never know how to pronounce these, like the AEs in Greek mythology. You get what I mean. She's reading up on all these things. I believe it was Eliot in there too. She's just trying to find the best information. Turns out Peter has the same intentions. His motivations are a bit quieter so far. I'll get into his personality in a sec, and more of Alice's personality. He wants to go to hell and get him back, and he claims it's for the same reason. Obviously we know about her causing the death, so it's obviously not the same reason, but this way I'll definitely get a job. But Alice is really confused because he should be able to get jobs. He's like a darling boy of the department. He's specifically down like magic, and then his sub route is to do with logic, and so apparently he's like adored in the department. So she's kind of like, there's more to this. And so there's more to this, but he claims to have the same reasoning. So Alice, she is high achieving, obviously, Cambridge, whatever. She seems fairly type A so far. She has always fought to be the best. Something I also quite enjoying about her personality is the academic jealousy side of things. Alice finds it really hard to see Peter getting things that she wants in terms of academia. For example, a prestigious fund, like grant money for whatever research, him getting it instead of her. She talks about that jealousy that she feels and about him maybe doing better in this course or module or whatever, especially since she is so high achieving. You can tell she was used to being top of her class all the time, and now she got to Cambridge and suddenly she struggled a little bit with having opposition, which she's not used to. I loved that part of her. Whereas Peter, he comes across as quite nice, like nice to everyone, but it only kind of goes to a certain point. He does not like to open up. We've seen this already, like only 80 pages in, and we've seen that he really does have boundaries. In a, I'm keeping you an arm's distance away. I'll be nice and I'll be nice to everyone, but no one's going to get deeper. So you can tell he has a lot of walls up around him. There was an interesting comment about him being sick earlier on, and that intrigued me. It was an offhanded kind of comment about how he was unwell for a certain situation, blah, 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 and he couldn't do something for their professor. And that to me, I was like, is this like chronic illness stuff coming in? Is this us being hinted at that there's more going on with Peter with his health? Is that a potential thing? That's very interesting, and I'd say a lot of university students could also relate to that, missing opportunities because of sickness and just chronic illness. I'm speculating there. There's nothing actually current in the book to suggest that that's the way this is going. These are the thoughts that spring through when you rattle my brain as I'm reading this book. There's that, and then he's also much more type B. He's pretty much described as unkept, completely opposing Alice, and I think that's on purpose. They're rivals, and I see how maybe they may not be able to see eye to eye because they're so different, but they have this thing in common, and the relationship so far is really interesting. They definitely have some weird history between them. It seems like they were really close maybe in their first year of postgrad, but within the last year of their lives, something changed to make them not friendly at all and very competitive with each other, very braggy, very like, oh well, I got this, you got this. We get Alice having these kind of flashbacks of times where they collaborated, puzzling stuff out, and they seemed like a really good team. So I'm really curious to know what the breaking point was, like what happened to cause this awkwardness now. Anyway, they are both brilliant scholars, basically. I really like this dynamic between them. They did the magic and they've actually managed to get to hell. At this point, we're getting a description of hell. We have their grey fields, dark red sky. They arrive and end up in the fields of Asphodel, Greek mythology. I love it. Fields of Asphodel are like a waiting place. Think kind of purgatory, where you wander for eternity. There's nothing going on. There's nothing to do, just be. You go from the fields of Asphodel into your judgment to get sorted into different parts of the underworld. I liked reading about this. The setting of the fields of Asphodel was instantly very, very familiar to me because of Percy Jackson. Guys, take a shot every time I say Percy Jackson. I've been set up really well for this book just by being a Greek mythology fan because of Percy Jackson. The fields of Asphodel I already had a vision of, and they fit the description in here. Even the shades, the spirits that wander the fields fit the description I have in my head, the image I have in my head. I have it somewhere here. I have this image from when I was really little, I'd say about 10, 11, when I read Percy Jackson, of what the shades look like, and it's still the image I have of the shades. But basically, yeah, they're wandering around. Alice and Peter are trying to find Grimes. So it's Professor Grimes. I can't remember his first name off the top of my head right now. Professor Grimes, they're trying to find him, and they tried to kind of summon him, but instead these 4 figures come towards them. 4 shades. These 4 shades are 4 students who died because of Professor Grimes. It tells you a lot about Professor Grimes and the type of man he is. That's a really interesting scene. It's a really good scene, and I really liked it. Through this scene, we actually find out that Peter is afraid of heights. Something else that I thought was really fun, and this is about to get a bit nerdy, but sure, here we are. Peter and Alice are discussing the geography of hell, because there's no one account that's correct. There's a lot of outdated accounts, blah, blah, blah. They both drew different maps of what they think hell looks like and what way they should go to get to Professor Grimes in what they assume is the 8th layer of hell. Peter starts to hypothesize that maybe hell is a hyperbolic space. This tickled my brain. Hyperbolic spaces are to do with non-Euclidean geometry, which also happen to be some of my favorite topics in university. Again, this felt like kind of a nod towards me. I drew this little graphic, let's see, of Alice, POV Alice and Peter in their hyperbolic space. It'd be more likely that it'd be a bit more like the saddle picture I drew over this way, with the negative curvature, because it'd be more like this than like that. But again, it tickles my brain. So there's a helicopter. And when Peter was talking about this, I warmed up to him even more. I was like, yeah, I like him. I like him. This is good for me. So I wrote down here, fun fact, rectangles don't exist in hyperbolic geometry, which is true. And if you're curious about that, look up the universal hyperbolic theorem, which is really fun. I was surprised by the bits and pieces of logic and mathematics. I think it's because Peter has gone down the logic route of magic, and so I know which one I would choose. I would follow Peter. I really like that, but don't be intimidated by any of the maths. There's not actually that much at all. There was just more than I expected, which was 0, especially from a book where I assume the author's interest lies more in linguistics, which portrayed through Alice, because she's gone down the linguistics track of analytical magic. Why is there mathematics clashing in this book? I am telling you, maths is catching strays left and right. Magicians and mathematicians are supposed to hate each other. Yeah, it's really weird. There was like some offhand comment about that. A bit of respect for maths, please. That was that, and then we've gotten through to court 1, which is Pride, and it is a library. They figured out that you have to kind of go through each court in order. So the first court is Pride, and then court 2, court 3, blah, 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 all the way to court 8, and then to talk to the kind of deity of the underworld, which is from all religions, mythologies. It's all the same person, just different names for the same person. And you have to get through the 8 courts to talk to them, and then whatever. That's kind of the vague plan. But I think they're hoping to run into Professor Grimes on the way through all the courts. So they're in court 1, and it is a library. The task to kind of pass to the next court is define the good. You need to make an argument or something, and the only hint is define the good. And that's as far as I've gotten. Alice and Peter have just been kind of introduced to this. They need to figure it out, basically. That's as far as I am. Oh yeah, I have one last thought that I haven't addressed or said to you, is that I have a question. Was Alice like romantically involved with Professor Grimes? Just her and Professor had a particularly bad relationship, and I'm wondering if he was taking advantage of a grad student, because that doesn't sound out of the realm of possibility, in my opinion, for who his character is. He's being set up as a truly detestable person. I don't know. If so, poor Alice. And we'll see. I'll keep you updated on that. Maybe I could be right. I could be wrong. There's my update on Katabasis. Keep watching and I'll keep you updated. update time. I am now on page 301, so we have passed the halfway point, and I have some thoughts and feelings. I've kept keeping my notes. When I last saw you, we were kind of just getting started. I was on page 88. Now we have had time to go through some of these courts. We've seen what they entail. We've seen pride, desire, greed, and wrath. The courts are only going to get more and more brutal, so I believe they're heading towards violence now. The general gist of the courts is each court, while it's one of the sins or whatever, the people there are not necessarily being punished for this sin. It's more that they are engaging with this sin in the respective court. So for example, we have pride is the first court they pass through. People who were proud in their lives end up in pride court or have to pass the pride court in order to resurrect and rebirth all the rest. The shades who want to pass through pride have to research and put together, formulate an argument for defining the good. What does good mean? They then have to present their arguments to essentially like a board. It's all very academia based. Examples of people who ended up in that court were people who stole work or bragged about this choice they made in their life, that choice they made. It was all very braggy. These people now, for the rest of eternity, unless they manage to pass, are going to spend their lives researching, finding the good problem, and giving speeches to try pass through. Another example is in desire. The shades are in like little cells engaging with whatever their vice is in excess. The whole thing about the desire side of things is excess. The way to get through desire is to give up this thing that you are essentially addicted to. Kind of beat the addiction. Found that to be quite an interesting depiction of the concepts of the courts and the sin related courts. Next thing I have written is about Professor Grimes. So far no luck with finding Professor Grimes, but we do have more information on Grimes' relationship with Alice. I was kind of questioning if the relationship was romantic. Funnily enough, I think Peter thought the same, but no, it's equally sinister though. Grimes essentially has used Alice as this guinea pig and used her in his own research, like physically, and basically carved a pentagram onto her. She can no longer forget things, which seems like incredible, but also think about small, sometimes not great things that happen in your day, like, I know, spilling your coffee, tripping on the path, just little things, not world shattering, but little enough to kind of irk you for a few minutes, maybe an hour, but then you kind of forget about it and you're just like, okay, moved on, I'm fine. She can't. She cannot do that. She is living her life without the ability to forget, which is horrific if you think of it that way. And Grimes did that to her. Basically, Grimes is abusing his power over Alice, just not in a sexual way. I don't like. I think it was around chapter 10, chapter 11, we started to see Alice get a bit suspicious of Peter due to reading something on his notes. She starts to believe that he's going to trade her in to save him and Grimes, which I don't have much more information about yet. Like, she hasn't fully confronted him properly, but I'm pretty sure she's incorrect. She has drawn the completely wrong conclusion based on his notes. Really don't think he's going to betray her. I'm thinking maybe that he's suspicious about her involvement with Grimes and his death, but I really don't think he's actually going to betray her and hurt her. I think he cares a lot for Alice, more than she even realizes. And we got a lot of background into how they were back in their first semester at Cambridge. We got all their bonding moments and we really saw Alice start to fall for him, and even she knew she fell for him because we are from Alice's point of view. And then how hot and cold Peter turned from there on. It is incredibly frustrating for her. I'm curious what's going on with Peter. Earlier I did have the theory that maybe he was like chronically ill or something, but again, I could be wrong. I could be making stuff up, but we'll see. I mean, we have a second half of a book to get to. I definitely want to mention a trigger warning for suicidal ideation, because there is quite in-depth conversations about suicide. If that's something that is really upsetting and something that you know you cannot read about or listen about, just be careful and look after yourself, because there is definitely in-depth discussion about suicide, and even the main character thinking about suicide and admitting that she has contemplated taking her own life. There's your warning. I'm not going to dwell too long on that, just in case anyone watching does have a sensitivity towards that. Just so you know, going into this book there may be stuff yourself about that. Trust yourself. You know yourself better than I do. Oh yes, so we've been introduced conceptually to a couple called the Kripkes. That is their surname. That's why it's Kripkes. And they are like these fanatic magicians who they kind of do trick magic. When they were alive, they would do big spectacles to kind of prove how good they were. Last big trick that they wanted to do was to come back from hell. They died purposely. This was about 5 or so years before the setting of the book, and they haven't come back yet. They are kind of loose in hell and they are causing chaos. They don't want anyone else coming back before they do. So anytime a magician has ventured into hell in the last 5 years, they've dealt with them. This couple have really like lost their humanity completely. It's really sinister. There's parts of this book that I'm like, oh, that's really rough. They're kind of our big antagonists at the moment. They obviously will not want Alice and Peter going back to the land of the living. Before they do, they are definitely coming after Alice and Peter. And it got close at one stage, but there was this other woman, Elizabeth, and she actually saved them. She was a Grimes student, which is really interesting. She passed away before the start of the book. I think she's there to be kind of Alice's comparison. We're supposed to see the way Alice could end up. Alice and Peter end up betraying her a little, just, you know, a smidge. And we're really getting ugly sides of Alice now. It's enjoyable, but also how far is she going to go for Grimes? Is she that kind of hypnotized by him and the belief in him? I'm also starting to suspect that maybe Grimes isn't as brilliant as we've been led to believe from Alice's point of view. Like, is this really Alice being this unreliable narrator? Is that a part of this? Because I'm really starting to think so, because both Elspeth and Peter are kind of under the opinion that he's not the greatest, whereas Alice will not accept criticism on his work, even though he's done some sketchy things. How good is he actually at his job, and how much of it was leaning on his research students? Or is everyone wrong but Alice? Kind of doubt that. So that's where I'm at right now. I think I'm going to almost finish this, maybe get near the end before I update you again. I'm on chapter 20. Let's keep going. I'll see you probably in a few days. We are now entering the final stretch, I suppose. I am on page 497. I only have about 50 more pages, which is potentially an hour of reading left. I'm going to finish the book on camera is the plan now. A lot has happened since I last updated you. Crazy stuff. Spoiler warning now. If you've not read up to page 497, bye-bye. Oh my god, I loved Peter's chapter, learning about his chronic illness, which I actually did see coming earlier in the book. I was starting to doubt myself, but I was actually right about it. And then his subsequent death, which was crazy. I should have expected it from R.F Kuang, but that was really crazy. Now I'm in the final stretch, and I will give you proper updates and full review once I finish. Probably tomorrow. It's a bit late now, so I probably won't give you a full review, and I'd like to stew on my thoughts. Let's finish this. That's it. Finished it. Thoughts to come. It's a few days later. I've had some time to dwell on my thoughts, and I'm here to give you a spoiler-free review of Katabasis. First off, welcome to the people who may have skipped all of the spoilery parts. You're safe now. Nothing I discuss here is going to be really beyond what you'd find out by reading the blurb. I gave Katabasis 5 stars. So let's talk about it. To give you a bit of a summary to start. Katabasis is set in a world with analytic magic, and also in, I believe, the 1980s. The magic system in this book is so compelling. Magic is performed by exploiting contradictions in the world. There are different routes you can go down when studying magic. We have one character who goes down towards linguistics, and another character goes down the logic or mathematical route. So mathematical proofs can actually be used to perform magic. And if any of you know me, you know how much that is right up my alley. Enter our two main characters. We have Alice Law and Peter Murdoch. These two are academic rivals studying in Cambridge. They are studying the field of analytic magic under the infamous Professor Jacob Grimes, who is like a leading genius in the field, who also has an interesting reputation for being the worst academic advisor ever. He's super harsh and it's almost impossible to survive having him as an advisor. Like I mentioned a second ago, Alice is the character studying linguistics and Peter is the character studying more mathematical logic type stuff. At the start of the book, we meet our main characters right as they are about to travel to hell. Professor Grimes is dead and they are going into the underworld to get him back, so that they can get essentially recommendation letters and more grants for further study, and just basically to be able to get jobs. They can, you know, reference him and say, look, I survived Jacob Grimes. It's a pretty funny motivation to go to hell for. From there, we follow their journey into hell and through hell and watch as they attempt to find Professor Grimes and bring him back. Tied in with what's going on now, we get these chapters of flashbacks to Alice and Peter's first year at Cambridge. At the current time in the book, there's a lot of jealousy and tension between Alice and Peter, but it's very much implied that in the past that wasn't the case and they were actually quite close. Bit by bit, we're starting to see how they got to where they are now and why they interact with each other the way they do. The main theme that really stood out to me in this book was all about finding meaning in life or in hell. I won't dwell on that too long to stay on the safe side of spoilers. It's something to think about. That's kind of the synopsis without going further and telling you bits and pieces. Let's get into the parts about this book that I really enjoyed, because I gave it 5 stars. Let's talk about characters. So we'll start with Alice Law. Alice had the potential to be such an unlikable character. She believes, or has been, I suppose, the smartest person in every room that she stepped into her whole life, and that's kind of where she draws her energy. She strives to be nothing but a brain. She almost resents having bodily functions and things that take her away from academia. And we see her do many very self-serving things throughout the book, and yet I really liked her character. Her arc through this book is incredible. I would say that this book specifically felt very character driven. If I compare it to like Babel, I think Babel had a bit more going on plot wise, whereas this feels a lot more character study. And I think that really worked for me because I don't need a whole load going on. As long as there's really interesting character dynamics and also growth, I'm pretty happy no matter what's going on. And the fact that it was in the setting was hell made it even better. That arc I saw with Alice throughout the whole book was fantastic and suits my reading style so well. How she deals with things she has encountered in her life is pretty true to life, and the way everything is portrayed, I enjoyed it. I know that's kind of vague. Just trust me. Trust me in this. And then we also have Peter, our mathematical genius. Peter is quite sweet, but he does also harbor that competitive academic side that we also see in Alice. We see Peter pretty much entirely through Alice's POV. The book is written in Alice's POV. What we see of Peter is very biased and it's basically through her lens. He seems like he effortlessly excels in academia and the field that they are in specifically, which is part of the reason there's tension. Peter is quite an interesting foil for Alice throughout this book. He, for example, isn't quite as besotted by Professor Grimes. He definitely sees the flaws of Professor Grimes in ways that Alice can't. Because of the way the story is told, Peter's a lot less fleshed out because, again, we're not really in his head the way we are in Alice's. He was definitely a weaker character. It kind of felt like R.F Kuang put all of her energy into Alice and Peter got a few scraps. The dynamic between the two characters is really intriguing. I love the dynamic between rivals because there's always such a mutual respect between the characters. Even when they really dislike each other, they still are like, oh no, you are my equal. That's something that I specifically enjoy a lot more than, say, enemies to lovers trope. Alice and Peter work really well together. They definitely make a good team, both academically and through this journey in hell. I must say that the romantic subplot is quite weak. If you were going into this book thinking it's, oh, rivals to lovers, oh, it's just a love story. No, it's not. Don't pin all your hopes on the romantic subplot, because if you need romance to enjoy a book, this isn't the one. And that's okay. Let's talk about the writing style. This book is dark academia through and through. R.F Kuang's writing can be quite divisive. Generally, when you see things online about R.F Kuang's books, people either love them or hate them. I feel lucky enough that I am in the love them category, but there are people out there who genuinely despise her books. Kuang is an academic. You can tell when you read her work. You can tell when she speaks in interviews. She's so well spoken. Obviously, I've only read Babel and Katabasis, but you know, 2 out of 2 have had an academic setting. She very much pulls from her own experiences in academia for her books, and Katabasis is no exception. The book has like lots of references to academia and classic texts, most obvious being Dante's Inferno, along with some concepts from mathematics. But none of these references or proofs are overwhelming. She explains them really well, and anything that isn't necessary for your enjoyment of the book, I personally felt that all of the references and any maths concepts, anything like that, were used well. I wouldn't stress too much about those things if that's something you're worried about going into this book. You do not need any prior knowledge going into Katabasis. That brings me on to the pre-reading lists I saw. In case you and I are not on the same side of TikTok or the internet in general, I saw a lot of people having a lot of fun with the time coming up to the release of Katabasis by recommending texts to study before reading Katabasis and before it came out. If that's something you're into, keep going. Hell yeah, read all the classics. If that's something that overwhelms you and is stressing you out about this book, don't. You don't have to study to read this fiction book. It might improve some people's enjoyment of the text, but you don't need any prior knowledge. You don't need to study to read this book. Some people were really stressed about it. I saw both sides. I saw people who were really excited about it. Hell yeah, keep going. But then I saw people really stressed about not being smart enough for this book. Stop. Just stop. It's a great book. I truly recommend it to the dark academia girlies, especially now that it's coming into autumn or fall, as some people say. If you like R.F Kuang, I'd say you will like this book. Again, the closest thing I could probably compare it to was Babel for style and for R.F Kuang's writing. They're not similar though. They have completely different stories and vibes. Babel has a lot more going on, whereas this felt much more like a character study. So keep that in mind. But I would still say they are similar enough that I think if you like one, you'll probably like the other. And if that's the kind of book you enjoy, you'll probably enjoy this. If you hated Babel, I wouldn't bother with this book. Genuinely, I think it would be a waste of time and money. That's kind of my thoughts on that. I really enjoyed this. Was also really excited for it, and a lot of the time when I get really excited for a release, I get let down because I got too excited and then it didn't live up to these impossible standards I set for it. Whereas Katabasis, it feels like it quadrupled my expectations, even with the little bits and pieces that weren't my favorite things. But those little bits and pieces pieces didn't impact me enough to bring the rating down at all. This has been one of my favorite reads of the year so far, and I'm really glad I got to take you guys with me. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, here's another one that YouTube recommends for you, and I will see you next time.